FCPS School Board in 2019. She's passionate about supporting meaningful learning experiences for children and advocates connecting kids with the natural environment. Melanie is always asking really good questions, but my favorite one came in 2021 in the form of, what will it take to get Get2Green to the next level? Allie and I decided that what that really meant was, how can we bring environmental stewardship to all students? And so we developed this very ambitious 3-year expansion plan. It was supported by leadership and the school board, and is now being implemented here today with all of you being in this room, sharing your student engagement stories. Melanie is a Get2Green champion, and we welcome her to come share some words of inspiration with us. Melanie Marin.
Good morning. Being here is really a dream come true. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your energy. So I've never told this story of my inspiration and what led me to be here and elevate your work. So I thought I'd give it a try today. So it really, thinking back, what was my earliest environmental stewardship memory? And it was when the Exxon Valdez crashed in the Prince William Sound. That was back in 1989. And that was the age of my son, who's now in 5th grade over at Terracet. He's 11, and it really struck me. And even to this day, I will take the opportunity to not buy gas from Exxon if I can avoid it. And at that time, reduce, reuse, recycle was also coming up. The 80s and 90s, that was a big thing. Keep America beautiful, all those things. So I was into all that. I was cared about the animals and the land and the environment. When I got to college, I started studying a little bit more about environmental impacts on people, and how the not in my backyard elements, those NIMBY elements, like the landfill, the dump, the wastewater treatment plant, always seem to get put in communities that were under-resourced, where people of color lived, where children from backgrounds of poverty lived. So I learned a lot about that. In grad school, I also took some courses at the environmental policy school where I went to Duke University, and I went over to the policy school because I just wanted to learn more and understand. So then, though, I kind of put that aside when I got a job at the U.S. Department of Education, and I worked in the Title I office. It was the year No Child Left Behind began. This is 2002. And boy, did that change everything, right? So I focused a lot on that and the implementation of elementary, secondary ed. And like I said, I didn't have time or really ability to work on the environmental issues. Then it came time for me to have a family. And for me, I couldn't do that full-time job with trying to raise kids, so I became a consultant. Back then it was more unique than now everyone's got their side hustle. But I became a communications consultant, and I realized now is the time for me to dial back into those passions of environmental education. So I sought out this group called Nova Outside, which is an alliance for outdoor educators. And actually in Virginia, there are several of these regional environmental ed groups. And that's where I met my colleague and friend and really mentor, Elaine Tolan, who had created this Get2Green program. And I learned as much as I could. I didn't have kids yet. Well, I did have kids at this time. But so I learned not only about what was happening in Fairfax, but in Northern Virginia as well. And we put on the school, now Student Environmental Action Showcase, which I just attended last week, but really trying to understand what was happening. And then I took on clients that were focused on environmental issues, the National Park Service, National Park Foundation, Green Schools National Network, Green Schools Alliance. But then I landed my dream client. It was the Children in Nature Network. So this is, the Children in Nature Network was founded by author Richard Louv, who wrote the book Last Child in the Woods. And he coined the phrase nature deficit disorder. And this was that realization that our children were not outside as much as they used to be. Technology was starting to creep in, but I was thrilled. So I went to their national conference and got to staff him in Minneapolis. And at this conference, we had leaders from all over the country and Canada. And there was a speaker. She was from a very prominent foundation. She was a bit older, and she was saying, she was Black, and she said how when she was a kid, she went to a camp in a rural area. She was from the city. And she talked about how it was just a total eye-opening, life-changing experience because she had never had access to being outdoors like that. She also talked about how her roommate was a white girl whose father was the sheriff, and how they had to hide their friendship throughout the summer. Well, there was a palpable change at that conference after that talk. Some people said, we are about teaching conservation. You're about environmental education for the sake of conserving our resources. And there was another split that said, no, we are about equity, as access to nature is about equity. So what happened? So the work went on, and to Children and Nature Network's credit, they embraced the equity issue. So access to nature is an equity issue, and they continue to just expand. So I helped work on projects that curtailed resources on how to build not just one outdoor classroom and nature-based learning in schools, but whole school divisions. They had projects where they would take city teams, not just the park service and the schools, but the libraries, transportation, land waste, all of that, and they would, as a team in cities around America, figure out how to create access to nature. So that's really what led me to, well, that's part of my path, and then once I got on the board, I said, well, we've got to do this, and COVID set us back a little bit. But come 2002, we started budgeting. We just did the work. We mapped it out, and here we are. It took longer than I would have liked, but we're here. So thank you. Thank you. So I'll leave it at that and turn it over again to the wonderful Elaine Tolan, who is going to regale us with lots of amazing stories, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. So most of you know